University of Southern California with his residency in adult psychiatry at Langley Porter Neuropsychiatric Institute, Department of Psychiatry. Dr. King holds numerous positions in numerous recognized affluent circles. Without further ado, may we welcome our speaker, Dr. Richard King.
Thank you for your lovely invitation. Thank you, Black Media, for inviting me. And thank you, brothers and sisters, for coming out on a cold Saturday night. But it's going to be warm in here. It's going to be sweet in here. Not because of me, but because of us. Not because my particular words. I just hope to be a doorway tonight. Hope the Spirit bless me with His presence to share with you. And I hope that in our collective sharing of ideas tonight, we'll walk away from this place with something more than we came here with. I've been blessed in the past 7 months with crisis. I didn't understand the crisis. Something just took me and set me down. For 7 months, I have not been in my usual travel mode, hopping on planes. I tried to explain this to my dear wife, and she has a responsibility known to my children. And they said, my children bared with me. My wife bared with me too. She gave me words of hot encouragement to pay those bills. But she put up with me, as sisters knowingly do. They want to keep you on focus, but they support the program. Now they'll tell each other that when you get to that brother, you gotta, hey brother, stand up. Kind of. But I appreciate that. I hope I grow wise with each moment. But in the course of those 7 months, I have lived in the library. I've worn that photocopy machine out. I got all my quarters and my nickels and my dimes. So I'm brought a little bit of the harvest here tonight. And that added on to my discussions with brothers who I've met today. I think I feel a tree growing even greater. So bear with me. Let me give you just an outline. The brothers and sisters have told me that you may even indulge me with a long evening. So feel free to leave at whatever time you choose, because this might be a long evening. It might. I hope the time passes quickly, that you feel it was just, oh goodness, you mean 2 hours, 3 hours have passed? Don't feel that you have to stay. You got things to do. You got to go take care of your business. And for those who are able to stay, it doesn't mean anything less or greater if you have to leave. But I'm prepared to go all night long. So let me just kind of go on with it now. This question, Melanin, I was on Sister's radio show last night, and she was so kind a host to put up with me and take me through this. And we started off with a comment, and this phrase kept repeating itself again and again and again. So when I hear those whispers, they keep whispering like a little faint wind. And then through experience, I think I have learned to, hey, something else is talking. So check it out. The comment was, she asked the question, well, what about this thing with the ozone layer, and how much light can black people tolerate as compared to white people? So I went into my usual technical discussion, filling up space. And the truth was, hey, brother, come on, let's get to the point. Get out of focus, you know. And as we went through that, I think at some point the truth jumped out and says, you know, the truth is the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. So I had to back up. And I just jumped out. We just kind of rushed on to something else there. So then I recall that it wasn't but 2 months ago I'm lying on my couch. Everybody's asleep in the house. And this one of these cable network programs is talking about fertilization. I said, oh, this is a pretty good program, showing you visually the fertilized egg move out of the sister's fallopian tube and before it anchored into the wall of the uterus. And do you know what the name of that fertilized egg was? Blackberry. Oh yeah, the black of the berry. The sweet of the juice being life itself. Now in the technical world, oh see, and this not the technical, because the technical world is the cosmos. That's the real world. The books that I have behind me is a little slice of an instant of time in which somebody has got a way of trying to write something down, but that's the real technical world. Sun, moon, and stars. But in this little political program that we live in now, they call the blackberry the morula, M-O-R-U-L-A, and it means blackberry. It is a blackberry because it's black. Now, he may want to call himself white boy. He may want to call himself yellow boy. If you are a human, you start from a blackberry, showing the ancestry of all life. When the mother's egg originates in her fallopian, in her ovaries, before she is even born, when the father's spermatozoa originates in his testicles before he is born, do you know where those cell lines come from? From the infant's pineal gland. That's a blackberry. Then in the formation of that infant, in the first week of life, as that ball of cells, that mother's egg meets that father's sperm, both of them containing black stuff. The Africans didn't call it melanin. That's a Greek name. Africans call it Kim. Kim. K-M. And they pictured it as a piece of wood burnt at the end. Now we're getting deep. A piece of a tree. The symbolism of it. A tree of life burnt at the end. Doesn't mean burnt up. It means infused with spirit. Infused with life from another realm. Life being so intense it turns black, not because it's being burned, because it is being raised up. It's being raised to a higher plane. So we get away from a other kind of notion. But notice, here we are, this fertilized egg, fertilized ball meets, both of them containing Kim. They meet, they become one. That's heaven. We have, at that moment in which they become one, we have an opening of a cosmic gateway. That's a transcendent time. Now, melanin, or Kim, better yet known, let's just step back for a minute. Let's play with this. Let's not play with it. Let us allow it to play with us. The name Kim, black. We notice its location. If you walk into the temple of Abydos, where Wasir was worshipped once a year, we came back to where his head was buried. There are three major divisions: the outer courtyard, the middle courtyard, and the inner chambers. As you go from the outer courtyard, where the general public were given admittance to, everybody, you pass through the gate, the door, and if you look, that door has a left pillar and a right pillar and an archway. But look down. Look down when you walk through that gateway. That threshold, the bottom of the doorway, is Kim. It's black. It's made out of rose granite, black with flecks of red, to show life coming through from one dimension into another. As life passes from the spirit world into the material world, as life passes from, in that fertilized egg, from the spirit world into the material world to put life inside of the great African woman's heaven, her womb, coming through a black door. As you walk from the middle courtyard to the inner courtyard, again, you walk through a gateway. Left pillar, right pillar, archway, and down below, threshold, and again you see a black threshold made from rose granite with flecks of red. Take yourself now and transport yourself from Abydos to Giza. Walk inside the Great Pyramid and go up to the highest chamber, the ultimate gateway, and you'll walk into that same all black stone again. The king's chamber being made all four walls, ceiling and floor, from rose granite with flecks of red. Again showing a doorway leading to from the physical world to the spirit world. So these are things that are showing us the lectures written not by me, hardly me, not by any human. This is written by a supreme being itself, in the flesh of time, in the flesh of space, throughout the universe. Melanin is the black pen of God, the doorway to which God force moves. So for someone to step back and say, if you're black, get back, was a crazy sucker. That's somebody who is plain just dumb. By my definition, any definition, a person who is psychotic, a person who does not deal with reality. Now that's a universal reality of what the doorway that life passes through throughout all of the stars and planets and galaxies of the universe, let alone America, let alone Europe. And you're going to tell me that that common denominator throughout all of the universe, you are going to say is a sign of inferiority? You're psychotic. You're crazy. So that's a psychotic. That is a crazy man. Ain't dealing with no reality. Something so fundamental as that. Fundamental. That's the bottom line of life. And you're going to try to dismiss it as a sign of being inferior. That's a crazy tricker. No, it's not even a trick. It is just crazy. Crazy behavior. To think that you could get away with it is not even worth a breath. So let's not dwell upon that poor soul who's poverty-stricken and who thought that he or she could play a trick and expect it to last but a minute. Because the records, I don't care how many, and we'll talk about some of the libraries that may have been partially destroyed. I don't care how many books were burned. You burned all the Aztec libraries and the Inca libraries and some of the Kemetic libraries. You stole those and put them in the core of your Vatican. Hey, look, just get out your microscope. Look at the human cell. Follow fertilization and development. And the game is over. Real quick. If I take that same person who tells that lie, and if I take my knife my scalpel, or my blade, whatever you want to call it. And I give them a little touch-up job real quick. A few little quick strokes of love. And release them to a happier experience. Release them from their pain. If I do one of those kind of quick moves, and do as the Africans call it, sacrifice. If I do that kind of move, and I will see that I don't care how white your skin may be, how red it may be, how yellow it may be, I'm going to find a black man inside. I might find a crazy black man. But it's not going to be no blonde, blue-eyed madness inside. There's going to be some blackness in your brain, in your eye, in your ear, in your heart, in your nerves, in your lungs. We're going to find a massive amount. But then, bringing us back to the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, if I find that blue black man, and that brown black man, especially that black man, and look at, and that woman, especially that sister, if I look at her skin, because the largest amounts of melanin, sister tried to get me to make it, she wanted me to make it straight. Now, where is most melanin located? Oh, it's all over the body, all brand, blah, 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 blah. I was just skipping along. He said, brother, come on, just make the key points, please. And so I heard her remarks, and it stuck with me thereafter. So now I'm trying to do right by it. And it, in fact, is the majority of the melanin is present in the skin, of course. The skin is the largest organ in the entire body. The skin is the first eye of any life form. We see with our skin. Now, the very advanced Europeans will say that there's a first eye, a second eye, and a third eye, and a fourth eye. The first eye is the skin. The second and third eyes are the two lateral eyes, and the fourth eye is the pineal. And what the advancements will say, they'll say the skin is the first one. And the melanocyte that is present in the skin is a heavy, heavy number. Well, let me just kind of back up. I have some slides which we'll touch. I'm trying to just lay a groundwork. The study of melanin did not begin with Mr. European. Say that again. The study of melanin did not begin with the Mr. European. No way, shape, or form. We've already given you the name Kim as it was given by ancient Kamites. But let's go beyond ancient Kamites. Let's deal with the concept of the black dot. And then we will really get another little version of it. In the book, The Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man by Albert Churchward, in about the latter end of the book, there is a reference to the name Kui-Lan, K-H-U-I. And this is the name, there's a hieroglyph from ancient Africa around the Great Lakes region. Now, there are two mountains of the moon. There's an eastern mountain of the moon and a western mountain of the moon. Now, this gets way deep now. So you want to read another book called by a very racist author named Jean Haley called Picnic Katabu. But you take your net and you pull your pearls out of the mud. You go fishing. Bear a little pain, but you win a treasure. And so, of course, we write our own books later on, or it may discover them. But notice this. In that book, it talks about the mountain of the moon, which is Kilimanjaro in the east, and the 7 mountain peaks of Mount Kilimanjaro, or mountains of the moon, in the Mount Rwenzori mountain range in what is now Uganda, around Lake Mwanza, misnamed Lake Victoria. This is the African Holy Land. This is the African Holy Land. Why is it holy? It is holy because that was the land of the double shade. That's the place where humans sprang up out of the ground. That's where the humans first emerged on this planet. And if you read in another book that's called The Ancient Egyptian Mysteries by Rudolf Steiner in his Germanic lectures in the year 1908, you will hear that the human life was the first life on the planet. All other life descended from humans. And that life, human life, was on this planetary thing before it even became a planet, billions of years ago. It coexisted in the light. It was light emanating in light prior to the separation of the sun from the earth, prior to the separation of the moon from the earth, after the sun had already separated out from the earth. And then the moon later separated out from the earth. So those are things to get into. Nonetheless, coming back to this point, Kui land, it is a name formed by three axes, or double axes, two pyramids turned on the end pointing towards the tip, with 8 circles going around it, with a black dot in the center of each circle. That same concept of a circle, a black dot, is the African name for sun god Ra, the sun. So that's another key point. But guess what? In humans, we have inside of us a thing that is known as, guess what? Black dot. The name, dot, locus, cerealis, Sanskrit for black. It's not because the Aryan invaders of ancient Dravidian land or India were the ones who first did the anatomy. They stole the name cerealis from the Ethiopians who were there before them. This black dot is the uppermost in a chain of a black nerve track that runs through the core of your brain, from the middle of the brain down into the spinal column. And that is true of any animal that has a backbone. That locus cerealis, that black dot, is the same thing that puts a nerve into your pineal gland, your third eye. That black dot is the same thing that helps you to turn on to dreams. Let's step back on dreams. I see a room full of traveling people. About traveling men, I talk about a traveling nation. Because it is your blackness that allows you to fly at night, to physically to leave your bodies and to go into other realms and to come back home again. The statement of slavery, the statement of the crazy boy, is his envy of how far you can travel and who you can talk to. Can you imagine the kings and queens being hoodwinked into thinking that they're second best, yet as soon as they close their eyes at night, they're back home again. Yet they have a fleeting memory of when they awaken the next day. And they say, I wonder, is that real? Can I really be that great? Am I that beautiful? This thought that I have, is that really a creative thought, or is that just crazy thought? Girls, stop thinking like you can't be that. Boy, you can't do this, you can't do that, after you have just left the universal college of life on who knows what planet in what galaxy. Doctor, can you talking crazy? I'm just talking real. I talked to brother tonight, and I said, well, hey, I can be a little bit more real tonight, can't I? We're going to go on with it now. It is said at these astral realms, and you'd want to read another book by Ledbetter on the astral body, which talks about how you leave the seven astral realms. You'd want to read books by Cosmic Fire by Alice Bailey, but in particular, get out your copy of the Coming Forth by Day book. Get out your copy of the Gods and Egyptians by Budge and read up on, or we have these two books back here, which I hate to push my own little thing, but in the book called Black Light, there's an article in there on the subject of the kinetic images of light, which reviews the 3 phases of sunlight the three phases of moonlight. And you will read about of course, the phases of moonlight were governed not by the male principle, but by the female principle. So it was the goddess of the rising moon, the goddess of the full moon, and the goddess of the setting moon. Now, it often is shown in Kemetic literature how it was Tahuti who was the god that was revered for moonlight. But you got to realize, Tahuti is shown as sitting down writing the book of life, but he's only writing what he was told to write by his queen. Painful thing for me to say, but it's the truth. Still trying to work with it. I got all my degrees. Just sit. I'm speaking to you, boy. Listen to me. And when you realize that her power to speak, because of her own special powers, is the way that nature designed it, and that God designed it. So you just may as well just shut up. Ain't none of your business. Get in line and try to go with the flow. Not try, must go with the flow, or be removed. So that's it. Now we'd hope for temperance, but past that point, as one brother told me some time ago, ain't none of my business. Just go fit into the program. And as I recall with the sisters in my family line, and they've all been thunderous sisters. They didn't just speak. They spoke with thunder. I mean, now I can partially see how they kept this line moving. But again, coming back to the point of Tahuti writing down what his queen told him, Goddess Ma'at told him what to write down. Yes, she did. Goddess Ma'at was the chief judge of justice. She's the chief judge. And she said, I'm going to put it in the past tense because she's not past tense. She's current tense. These gods they talk about in Kemet did not cease to exist at all. They are immortal. What does that mean to you? They know no such thing as death. Neither do you, in truest sense. But anyway, in the goddess Ma'at is shown to sit in the hall of justice with the 42 judges, each one of them judging a particular attribute, whether you did or did not do this commandment. This is the 42 negative confessions. And each one of them stands for, guess what? One of our ancestors. One of the line of our ancestors. And this hall of justice is in, guess where? Where is this hall of justice located? In the cosmos. Where? In the core of the sun. In the core of the sun. You know the one you see rising? So the light that is put out, this is extremely advanced. That's why I say in the African origins of biological psychiatry, the European is afraid because of his misdeeds, all the hell he's put our people through. He's afraid for the black man to have justice. He said, if I've mistreated him so badly, if I killed and raped his children and his women and him, if I've stolen his knowledge and hidden it, if I've lied and done all these things, he's afraid of retaliation. But even if he wanted to do right, guess what? He even lacks the knowledge that is required to raise you up, sisters and brothers. He doesn't have the advanced knowledge that is required to deal with super advanced parents. He's a child, you're the parent. He rules only because you and I, for whatever reasons it may be, are asleep just now. But guess what? You're waking up. You're waking up. You can feel the stirring. Oh, boy, time to get up now. And you hear the scurrying. Oh no, Mama and Daddy's waking up. Oh, I made a mess. I know Mama's going to tear me up. Yes, she will. Oh, what is wrong with my house? And here comes Daddy. Mama, what should I do? Don't even need to ask sometimes. Straighten it out. So here we have this monumental time in history in which there is a wakening up, as Ivan Van Sertima said, after the 500 years sleep. Now check these dates out. And I'm saying all this as a backdrop. We've already go to a slideshow in which we amplify some other aspects. In the book, The Columbus Conspiracy by Michael Bradley, it is made known these critical little facts. These are some nice little facts. On that date that Columbus left to set sail for the Americas, he wasn't discovering a thing. You can't discover somebody if you meet somebody waiting you on the shoreline who's more civilized than you are. They've already been there. And there have been multiple travels. That's for somebody else to give lectures about, but multiple travels prior to the time of Columbus. On the day that he left was the same day at which the last African stronghold in Spain peacefully gave the power back to the Spanish. Is there a connection? And in looking at the background of Columbus, you get into a lot of intrigue. He may not have even been in terms of his political, spiritual identity. In other words, he was a person who was part of a group of inner knowers who had been in contact with some suppressed knowledge about the real makeup of the history of Christianity and Islam, and especially Africa. So on that date, that 500-year period, and guess when that 500-year date came to an end? Same day, 500 years later. Guess when it came to an end? The day of the rebellion in April of 1992. The day in which African people around the world, especially in Los Angeles, heard it even happen here in Atlanta, in which the white boy had beat down a brother, as we all have seen too many times. You say, I don't have to give you any justice. I'll do what I want. I'll put it in your face. Brother said, yeah, check this out. And moved on him spontaneously and checkmated him real quick. He said, oh my goodness, Mama and Daddy are waking up. You drew a line in the sand and said, you crossed it. Get back, Jack, right now. So that was a 500-year coincidence. Not a coincidence, it was a date that marks the beginning and the end and standing up. Many things taking place beforehand. But let's go on to a slideshow in which we'll draw out some of the other points. And I brought my little workbooks, so we want to just chew on some melanin facts and chem facts. It can be a very lovely evening. Thank you. Now, again, when the mother's egg is fertilized by the father's sperm, that ball of cells rapidly multiplies. It forms a thing called the pigmented pole. Word pigmented just means what? Black dot. Pole dot. So a black dot formed on the surface of a mother's fertilized egg. And those cells will then, the DNA will then develop into two, it will split apart and form two different poles at each end. Then those cells will divide, and then further divide. And again will pass within the first 4 days from the mother's fallopian tube as the black berry, the morula, and then anchor itself to the mother's uterine wall of her life-giving womb, another black dot. Now while there, the first two hormones that are made when that more or less anchors into the wall of the uterus is called a trophoblast. It makes two hormones, human chorionic gonadotrophin, HCG. You know the hormone that you have a pregnancy test? That's what they're looking for, HCG. The other one is, guess what? Aha! Melanocyte-stimulating hormone, the thing that controls black pigment cells. So from day one, blackness is working, directing traffic, building the actual scaffolding and structure of the human body. Again, it is the blueprint. It is directing. It's telling DNA what to do. Melanin dictates to DNA what to do. Melanin precedes DNA. So that early ball of cells invaginates and forms a tube. The tube is called the neurotube. The outer layer around it is called the neural crest. The neural crest, from that originates the things that are later known as the pineal and also the melanocytes. Also from that neural crest region, we also have some other formation of things that become pigment sites in the so-called 12 pigmented brain centers in the brain stem and midbrain. We also have the formation of the optic cup from which the eyes form. But again, the pineal gland originates as these pinealoblast cells, and they later can become pigmented cells as well. The so-called pigmented epithelial cells of the eyes and the pigmented cells of the pineal. And you also find the pigmented cells in the inner ear of the ear itself. You could not see if you did not have melanin in your eye. Not in the outer eye, the iris, but in the inner lining of the eye. You could not hear if you did not have melanin in the inner ear of your ear. The hair cells that line that fluid-filled chamber, the stereocilia, sit over a thing that is called the stria vascularis, and that has melanin underneath. And as those as those hair cells move, as a result of a mechanical force coming through the eardrum and making the middle ears move and putting that fluid into motion, those stereocilia, depending upon where in that chamber those cells move, you have a certain nerve pulse generated that makes up the sound that you actually hear. So that your hearing is dependent upon it passing through that melanin layer. And when you have diseases like vitiligo or albinism, you have defects not only in skin pigmentation, but defects in vision and defects in hearing. Oh yeah, I know why you like that bass tone. I think I do. Because you can hear it. Somebody else just hears noise. Oh yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah, you can rock and roll with it. When it hits you, you feel a tingle in your spine that won't let go. It makes you rise up. Why? From the ear to the pineal gland, right quick. But somebody else, they have a shorter, what we call temporary threshold response period. They hear a sound. It takes a longer period, a much longer period of time for their sensory apparatus to set up again to get the new sound. But you have a much shorter period of time, and also you can take it. Somebody else might hear it. They have a hard time getting set up for it, but the machine may break down on the other end, and they may get a permanent scar just by hearing certain bass notes. Just by hearing certain bass notes. So here you are moving with that bass, moving it, kicking it, thumping it, moving, dipping and dapping. Somebody else said, oh, what? And said, no, let's make it a little bit lighter, please. You said, no, bring it on again. I can recall going through school at certain times. I didn't even want to hear the lighter note. I wanted to feel the bass in my chest. I wanted to feel it in I especially wanted to feel it in my bones. I want the bones to tingle. And then I said, oh, now we're getting someplace. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to evoke me into a trance state, to send me into a clear state of reception. So you're trying to escape. No, I'm trying to get renewed. So anyway, here we have the pigmented layer, and you see these various cells that come out. Swan cells. The swan cells, they originate from pigmented cells. Those are the cells that form the coating on all motor nerves. Do you hear that? The swan cells are cells they're called supportive cells, and they are formed in the core of the brain, and they form the coating or they form the myelin coat that is formed over all voluntary nerves. So when you're a young boy, my little boy has a problem. He likes to lay in bed and drink his fluids at night. And I said, man, not after 9, please. Oh, Daddy, let's just last little bit of apple juice. I'm always giving in to him. At 10 o'clock, my man's swimming. You know that whole story. But I know he will outgrow it because he's going to have more and more of his nerves to become myelinated. Then we'll have more voluntary control. I don't want to petrolize him with fear. I'm trying to make him clean up after us, no doubt. But the myelin and voluntary nerves occur. Now, on the other side, melanin or melanization of nerve tracts takes place even throughout adult life. There are certain nerve tracts in the forebrain that become increasingly more pigmented as you exercise better judgment. What do we mean by that? As you practice the 42 virtue, the negative confessions, as you are more in rapport with the ancestors. You got a blessing. You did well today. Here's your black star. Boom. Here's your black dot. Boom. Raise up. You get another one. Boom. You're growing now. Here's another one. Oh, you missed it, Charles. Oh, and that's not the way. So here we have the melanated nerves, and we're showing the location in the inner ear. The location in the inner ear is extremely important because that's a place where the musicians are going to really focus in more so, or probably know a fair amount already, as to what sounds, what wavelengths of sounds activate black people for action. That's a critical scientific discovery that was known in the past that is being intensely studied now by your musical scientists. By your musical scientists. Certain patterns of sound, not just a note, but the patterns of a note. In looking at the traditional religions, and looking at the things that are called the Ifa, for example, when a certain god is going to be evoked, it's a certain kind of bass pattern of beat that is used, and each one goes with a certain kind of god or goddess. Certain kind of melanin present in the mesentery, the kind of sheet that the intestinal tract lines on. The intestinal tract is deep, 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 deep study. The hormones that are present in the intestinal tract, guess where you find them? In the pineal gland. They are found in the cerebral spinal fluid in the core of the brain, being taken up by the pineal gland to further give, in other words, the food that you take in, be it light or especially physical food, is ultra profound in terms of how it either activates or deactivates the pineal. The timing in which you eat, critical. How often you eat and what you eat, critical. Critical. And so we have, I mean, there's certain, some of the enzymes that are used, the intestinal enzyme, for example, and also some of the ones that involve also in the kidney appear. They are taken up and they appear in concentrations in the so-called cerebral spinal fluid about 5 or 6 times greater. One basal of an intestinal one, I can't recall the exact name, but just this very second, 5 times greater in the cerebral spinal fluid than in blood itself. Now the I'll show you a thing on the cerebral spinal fluid, because the way in which we look at the brain is again the way in which the European looks at the brain. And it is helpful for some things, but there's another way to look at it. And the cerebral spinal fluid is a critical way to look at it. Again, the melanin present on the leptomeninges, this is the coverings of the brain. Can you imagine that your brain, your black brain, is not just what's inside your skull? Your black brain, my fellow Africans, is your entire body. Your entire body is your brain. And melanin is like, if you will, a computer disk all over your brain. These melanocytes communicate with each other. It doesn't matter if the melanocyte is a brain cell in skin. And they communicate with each other whether they are connected anatomically or not. They communicate because they are able to get in vibe with each other. They communicate by distant electromagnetic fields. They communicate by blood-borne released hormones, growth factors, growth hormones. They communicate by would you believe, the so-called T4 cell that's involved in AIDS? Heavily involved with melanocyte. The so-called Langerhans cells that are involved in diabetes, that comes out of a melanocyte. It differentiates out of a melanocyte and travels from the lymph nodes back and forth to the melanocyte, getting its instructions as it goes back. Do you know your blood itself carries melanin? White folks don't have this. They don't have hardly much in the way of circulating melanin. Melanin present inside of white blood cells, passing through your blood in every organ of your body, be it brain, heart, toe, or finger. You have in these white blood cells melanin in black people. And the blacker the berry there, definitely the sweeter the blood. If you don't have much melanin in your skin, then you're losing it in your blood. This is only one example of a theory of what the melanin structure looks at. It's false. Why is it false? First, it's standing still. That's number one. Melanin never but never stands still. It's constantly in motion. Constantly in motion. Always. Why? It's living. It's alive. It's constantly communicating and interacting with all of the forces of life that pass through it. Now, it's also false because there's naturally occurring melanin in living systems and also in things that are outside living systems. As you have chlorophyll in plants, you have melanin in the animal world. The melanin in humans or animal forms is also bound to protein. Protein is another polite name for DNA results and RNA results. The protein component of melanin is different in each location. It's that complex. White boy said, "Oh, I thought I knew it." "Oh, no, it's too deep for me." And not only is constantly in motion, but its protein carrier is different in each location. So melanin that's present in the brain is different than melanin that's present in the inner ear. It's different than melanin that's present in the pigmented epithelium of eyes and also in the pineal in be it lung. Here's an old theory. It's long since been outdated. Light. African people, you are super genius minds. Super genius. This is the greatest joke in history, in which the child looked up to his super genius parent and said, "You are illiterate. You can't learn. And the blacker you are, get back." All that I could do with a cracker who tells me that lie is laugh and knock him out and move him real quick. Because I don't have no time for that kind of mess. That's a total lie there. Light, reaching the eye. Your pineal gland. We'll come to that in a little bit more detail in just a minute. Hypothalamus. Forget about melanocyte-releasing factor. That's since been thrown in disrepute. Melanocyte, melanosomes, those are also points to consider. Now, again, let me give you some references. Now, here are some names you should write down. Do not depend upon Dr. King, because you are a genius, and I will learn from you. I walk to the black media today, and look out. Every place I turn, there was a genius here and a genius there. They were just rapping and talking and lifting me up. All I could do was let my jaw hang down, open my ears up, and start writing. I went in, the brothers picked me up from the airport, and they were dropping down me deep. I walked in, sister was so kind to me, she dropped information on me. My sister helped me out, she dropped information on me. Now I went inside the beautiful restaurant next door. As I walked in the door, do you know what happened? I hadn't even got 2 feet in the door. The waitress said, Dr. King, aren't you Dr. King? I said, yeah. She said, I was a student in your class at San Francisco State University in my very first class, 1978. I said, ooh, what's happening here, spirits? I said, something's saying wake up time, you know. He says, and didn't you lecture on the black dot then? I said, well, yes. With the brothers, we talked about other things, about people having Henry Majid, Nation of Islam, Massimo 25, Fillmore, San Francisco. So it just, again, when you find those kind of currents crossing, then you know this is a day to remember. And you try to rise up to that day to do your job. But here we see an example of the Sphinx. If you read, now these are some things to write down. The Journal of Pigment Cell Research. The Journal of Pigment Cell Research. It's in your medical school libraries here, right over there at Morehouse, or the other, medical school. This contains the latest publications on melanin in the world. Take your $10 or $5, get your photocopy card, and go pull out Volume 6. That was this year's. Latest one was in October. Get the latest. I got a whole stack over here. In other words, empower yourselves. Do not be dependent upon anyone. You're that bright. You're that bright. I can't read the names. My sisters, my brothers, you have inside of your mind a infinite mind. If you just read it and sleep on it, when you wake up in the morning, guess what's going to happen? You will have traveled to another dimension, and they will have broken down for you real plain. See, Dr. King, I don't believe that. Try it. Try it. Check it out. Another journal, the Journal of Pineal Research. Now, they're going to play games on this. I'll tell you that up front. They're going to say it's maybe not available. Journal of Pineal Research Reviews. Another one might play a little game on that, too. But you can get another one called the Journal of Neurotransmission. That's much more widely available, especially 1986. The Journal of Neurotransmission. And the Journal of Cell Research. Journal of Cell Research. These are all, you'll find some sweet references on melanin, on the pineal. But the Journal of Pigment Cell Research, you'll get the abstracts of the last International Pigment Cell Conference held in London just this past few months in '93. And you'll get their abstracts, and there'll be one-page condensation of each of their presentations off the top. And they also try to make them jargon-free, so you can get this off the top. So keep those in mind, please. Also, I have the articles back in the back, the origin of biological psychiatry, which gives you a lot of information, and especially that is a very jam-packed reference material. And also, I have just 9 copies of the of the Black Light article, which is an article called The Eye of Faru, which has 243 references up to the year 1992. You know what this is. Need not further comment. It's a Sphinx. What is not shown is the weathering of it by water, which proves that it's older than, you have to ask, well, then when did water last fall in Giza? So that's where you date how old these monuments are. Here's the African study of blackness. The black cubit, called the nilometric cubit. This comes from the book Symbol and Symbolic by Swallow de Lubeck. When Africans worked in black stone, they used a special system of linear measurement, not the royal cubit, not the sacred cubit, but the nilometric black cubit. Because they're dealing with life factors between dimensions. Tomb of Ramses VI, from the book Tomb of Ramses VI, showing the solar bark of Ra with the African image of sun god Ra. This is the image of what we knew the phase of the god of the sun to be. This was our image of God. I mean, not the supreme God, but one of the major immortal deities which lives where? In you, in me. Up close. Oh, it's not blind. Of course not. There you are. There you are. There you are. Now, if you see him, if you turn his head around, you would see who? You'd see her. So understand, he was born from not a man. That's not even reality. He's born from what? A blackberry. He's born from a black woman. And clearly, and I'm stressing this point again because I'm trying to come to a clarity on this point, being forced to come to clarity. He's also receiving instructions from, guess who? A black woman. This is, of course, this, you know, is the first king unified Upper and Lower Egypt, but that's a certain point in history. We don't know how far back there were other unification events. This is an Anu, a so-called one of the noblemen of Abydos, the same place where the head of Wasir was found, was supposedly buried or returned to. These you've seen before. I actually received them from Brother Elizabeth Middleton, who I think received them from Brother Asa, right here out of Atlanta. So this is again showing the African, where you have the image of the black man of Egypt and the black man of other parts of Africa, and also the European right between the two black men and the Asiatic. That is a brother right inside of his burial coffin. I'm just showing that to show again his face looks like any brother in this audience right now. Any. And showing the difference between what appears on the surface of that coffin. Because it's just like right now, if I get into a Ford, it doesn't mean I look like a Ford. You know, it was just cheaper to buy a Ford than make my own Ford. Pair of Tutankhamun. There's his pineal gland right in the center of his forehead. Side view, Tutankhamun rising out of a lotus flower, lotus blooming. But what about the science, the melanin science behind that number right there? When you dip and you dap, when you're feeling your moves, when you've been studying and finally it all comes together. When you back up into a corner, you can't see how you're going to pay this bill and that bill, and you say, what the hell with it, I'm coming out now. When you're in that kind of place, lotus blooming. You draw upon a transcendent level of operation. You're drawing upon your melanin mind. You're drawing upon your blackness. Ancestors tell you what to do and how to do. You're not moving. White boy calls that what? Instinct. Now that's the statement of a psychotic child. A crazy man. Now when he sees the if I saw an IBM computer, would I say that is instinct? Just because it happened very fast doesn't mean I'm going to dismiss it. Because it was brilliant, I'm not going to dismiss it. If I'm envious, if I'm jealous, if I have trouble doing what you do, then if I'm weak, if I'm lazy, if I'm afraid, if I am riddled with laziness, but better yet, just plain old naked fear, then I will say it's instinct. But if I'm truthful, I'll say it is genius. Here is the unwrapping of the head of the mummy form of Tutankhamun. Here is the wrapping over his head. There's the upper bandage wrapping over the top of the crown. Why was an extra wad put on the very top? Because you wear a crown on top of your head. You got something special up there. That's your doorway through which you leave each and every night when you go back home to communicate and to be raised up and to be renewed. And there on the top of the head of Tutankhamun are these serpents. They were put in a linen fabric with golden beads. Now, for those students of anatomy, you know that those serpents end at a place called a certain fissure where you have a motor strip and a sensory strip either behind or behind or in front of it. And guess who this is? Tutankhamun's face, showing his full lips and his full nose. The African man that he was at age 18. Not Asiatic, definitely not Caucasoid. Sounds like down-home brother to me. Sounds like brother from the hood to me. So you look at that, my brothers and sisters, and you know again and again that it is a lie. It is a lie. It's a hustle. Straight up trickster hustle that somebody's engaged in brainwashing. Total distortion of it's not slight, it's not confusion. It's not intellectual splitting of hairs. Straight up lying. It's hustling. It's propaganda. Somebody's covering up knowledge and intentionally hiding it. This is a brutal assault upon the minds of all humanity. It's a rape of the knowledge of humanity by a gangster. Straight up, and a little tired gangster at that. Not a strong one, a little tired gangster. One that if you go toe-to-toe with him, hey, brother, deal on him quick. Sister, if you tongue lash him, put one of your powerful Macs on him, speaking with power and thunder, he's going to crack. Turn to dust in a minute. After you put one of those one of those hawk moves where you scream and come down on a person and lay all that truth on him, pow, it's over. Question is, do you want to wake up and use it? Yes, you do. Are you afraid of using it? Yes, you are. But as time moves on, you're more in love than you are afraid. So let it be. Yep, that's him. That's who they called a non-African. Can you buy that? No. Just clear cut. Tops of pyramids. Pyramidians placed on tops of pyramids. Why? 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 Remember the... Another look. Oh, it's back. Okay, it's just flipped. Well, let me tell you what it says. It's a pyramidion dating from a time of roughly 1081 BC. So that would place it roughly around the 12th dynasty, no, the 19th dynasty. And this is a pyramidion that is, again, the tops of pyramids usually had black capstones. The tops of pyramids are built to represent the human body. Then it's showing that in the tops of a human body is a black thing. That is your black antenna too. But it is more than an antenna. It's a black door. It's a doorway through which you open to go out and to come in. And that door is your pineal gland, your black dot. Again, the slide's turned around incorrectly, showing you how the serpent in the middle of the forehead was representing that black serpent. Now, often it was shown that there were birds that were placed around the eye. Now, what's that saying? Because you had the power of projection. And you had the... Now, this word projection is a sweet little word. That is, if I look at something, it is external to me. But I project onto it my memories of things of like character, something that is similar to that visual pattern. So I project onto it my past experiences and memory traits of all things of that particular pattern of appearance. That's one way of approaching it. In other words, the symbol activates my memory door for that category of events that are of similar pattern. But also, it makes you fly. It makes your mind, because an African mind is not just anchored here in you. It's like a tree. This melanin is like a tree with roots in my body, but its branches go up to the heavens. So when you compute a thought, you compute a thought for your own individual mind, but you also tap on cosmic mind. See, you can hit seventh gear. You can get into overdrive. You can go to top line connection. Now, the polite names in the European world are what? Collective unconscious, Psychiatric records. Those are the names in two different disciplines. Or you can use other kinds of names. You can, the limbic system, the limbic forebrain. You can talk about the diencephalon and the rhombencephalon. You can talk about all these other kinds of approaches. You can talk about the neural networks, other kinds of approaches. You just called it what? None. N-U-N. The waters of the cosmos. Again, human head, bird on top of the crown of the head. You now see why. Here is one of the pharaohs, bird behind his head. You understand why this behind the head? Because it will come up from his supermind. Surface mind's in the front. Supermind is behind. It's behind you because you can't even see all of it. It's the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg is up front. The iceberg is behind you. The one little leaf of this tree is in front, called you and your melanated body. That entire cosmic tree is behind you. Well, somebody said, covering your back, man? Yeah, your back is covered, black folks. Real tough. Real tough. Stars putting rays of light into the forehead. I've used this slide over and over again. But if you read from the book The Shrine of Tutankhamun by Piankanov, it gets into some very detailed discussions about the relationship between how the stars put light into us and how we as gods put life into the sun itself. In other words, when you leave at night, you go into the sun. You put life back into the sun. There it is. Serpent, rays of light to the forehead. Where's your serpent? Ah, feel your backbone. And very importantly, the woman's clitoris and the man's penis. I'm not trying to speak in a derogatory fashion, but speak about it in a glorified fashion. Two serpents, serpent above, serpent below. The tricker talks about the serpent below. Oh, don't you touch any of those serpents. They're all evil. As soon as you turn your back, he has grabbed his medical staff with the caduceus, having two serpents. He says, now, that'll be $1,000, please, for consultation. The one in the middle, oh, yes. The one in the middle is the one that is involved of what's in the middle. One that's in the middle is where the woman's womb is placed. And this is the place where the creation, Dr. Ben gave comments on this in the fifth Mellon lecture conference, that this was the God that was involved. This was the God Khnum, K-H-N-U-M. And it was the God that was involved in making man and woman on the potter's wheel. So it is that part that has the formative processes in the fallopian tubes and in the uterus, also in the man's testicles. Because in the man's testicle, in his family jewels, so to speak, they originate in the abdomen. And then as it comes time for him to be born, they descend into his scrotal sac. Sometimes, not always, sometimes you got to pull them down, and then they'll become inactive. And also, even during his daily movements, those testicles will move up and down that spermatic cord and go back into the abdomen, and then come back down again. That's high. Now that's some of the advanced science. And we have to get in. We have to talk about. I have to study that further. But the woman's in her womb, for example, is absolutely critical things. The woman's pineal gland releasing melatonin at exactly in mid-cycle. The melatonin release is timed to happen at the same time that her egg releases that life egg. The LH and FAC level, which is peak, the melatonin maybe play a role in triggering that release. It affects the hypothalamus and pituitary in turn. At that time, she will tend to have, she may, now I guess with certainty, because this is a work that I, as a brother, am not qualified to do. How can I, as a black man, sit up here and give you a sister a lecture on you? No. My sister says, you will have to pick this ball up. Not you already have. And I will wait to be further lectured from the sisters on this subject. So hear me in my unqualified position to speak lightly on such a mystery of life. The events that take place around the woman's emotional state are of the profoundest importance. She sets the stage for things. When she has an attitude, everybody has the blues. When she's loving, oh, we're so thankful. We're going to have a good time. But when she has an attitude, it can be rough, severe. And these are heavily timed to the relationship with the pineal gland and blood-borne factors and the release of endogenous opiates, enkephalins and endorphins that are timed to the release of pineal hormones and relationship to the menstrual cycle. There's a tremendous, and also the contraction of the uterus. For example, the menstrual cramping pain. When that comes down, it's clear out time. It's time just to be cool, just be pleasant, maintain, just maintain. She's not in any, and she also at different times, I am told, she is more psychic than at others. So I'm not qualified to give detailed conversation. I'm just observing. But so this is a very fundamental question: relationship of the menstrual cycle in mood states, feeling states, intuitional states, and the pineal relationship to what time of the month it is, and also if she has not had enough exposure to light itself, her menstrual cycle can be thrown off. Sometimes when her menstrual cycle is running late, other than due to the natural facts of life, it can be because she has not had enough exposure to light at a certain time in the midday. The fluorescent lamps won't do it at all. This is especially true during the winter months. So that when that is going down, be certain that you get that noon, not that setting sun, not that rise. The rising is pretty good now, but it is that noonday sun, that 12 to 2 time. Get that, and things may suddenly turn back around. So that the question of the menstrual cycle, in a like fashion, a man goes through his menstrual cycle. Now, I can speak about that, brothers, so maybe quietly. You know, when we're focused on a mission, we're trying to achieve a certain thing, we want everybody to shut up while we keep focused on it. Don't matter, don't care what's going on, just stay on my team, please. Kind of approach. Or sometimes when we just are in the mood, we want to be attentive. We run on a 40-day cycle. Sisters run on a 28-day cycle. It's a rough kind of figure. A 28-day cycle. So we go through those phases over a period of 40 days. And she goes through a period of 28 days. And usually about 5 days before or 5 days after the onset of the menstrual cycle is a time, or especially around ovulation, is a time that things can take place, especially 5 before the onset, the so-called premenstrual syndrome. Again, Africans knew about this combination, the opposite, the black and the white. Melanocyte melanocyte originates neural crest, moves out within the first few weeks of life and vaginates into the skin between the upper layer epidermis, deeper layer dermal level. It has the melanosome, which are these packets containing melanin that's inside of these arms called dendrite. Again, the melanocyte is a nerve cell in skin. And these little packets, little balls, are things called melanosomes. They contain melanin. And black folks, and there are 4 stages of melanosome development. Stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stage 1, empty. Stage 2, machinery, no melanin. Stage 3, half full. Stage 4, fully full. Africans, mainly stage 4. Asians, stage 3 and 4, more 3 than 4. Europeans, stage 1 and 2. Europeans have to have about 30 minutes of exposure to sunlight 5 days in a row for their machinery to come online and be able to pump melanin into their skin cells. You and I, right now, please. But we can also overdo it by heavy overexposure. But again, we have so much melanin online. When I'm exposed to light, as you are, I may turn red for a minute, but it's going to go on to brown, then on to black. So right now, winter months, I'll get a little tone or 2 lighter. Come around August, I'll see a different shade in here, at least 2 shades. Question just asked Rachel last night about the ozone layer is real, because that level of skin cancer is increasing profoundly in European groups. Profoundly. Their birth rate is plummeting. Europeans, they are dying faster than they're being born. Their populations are shrinking. And that's for those who want to call themselves European. Again, most of those who call themselves Caucasians in America are actually black folks passing for something else. I repeat, most of the folks, a majority of the Europeans in the United States are Africans of mixed heritage passing for white. Now, I'm not dismissing their psychotic conduct. When you pass over, you're crazy. I'm just trying to get some money to bring home. Most of you don't come back home. Most of you usually become more vicious than your oppressor. Because you're trying to, quote, qualify. You'll accept. You think I'm really white now, don't you? I did kill 10 of them. No, so don't buy that game. Don't buy the game because a person is passed over, if they can be trusted. No, you're going to stay in the game to the end. Now, there are the other complex people who do play these intermediate roles, come back and forth, but I'm not here to split hairs. I'm here to deal with what I see the majority kind of conduct. Majority kind of conduct is a psychotic kind of conduct in which people of color right now in December of 1993 are playing heavy skin color game right now. Okay, here are the four stages of millennium we talked about, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, the upper one is, let's see, the one that is labeled B is from a person who is part black, part white, and the upper one in A is a person who is European. Notice in B, you start to see large clumps. These are melanocytes with the little melanosomes in them. They tend to clump around the nucleus of a cell, partially as an umbrella to protect the nucleus from being affected by ultraviolet light. But also we have to get into the question of resonant light, how light can hit melanin and then hit up a resonant frequency, then give off a radio frequency wave or a magnetic wave that can further amplify certain segments of DNA chain. So it's not a question of all photoprotection. It's a very advanced question of amplification and selective amplification as well. Here is black person. Much larger amounts of melanin clumping, again, primarily around the nucleus. Okay, where is the pineal gland? You see it there, right in the center of the forehead, right in the midline. And this is a thing called pineal calcification, in which Europeans usually have a calcified pineal, usually in about 60 to 80% of their adult population. Africans, 5 to 15%. What is pineal calcification? It's where the pineal gets so much calcium inside of it that it shows up as a spot on an X-ray from a regular X-ray, also on a CAT scan. All pineals have some degree of calcium content. When you get heavy pineal calcification, you then have a reduction in the amount of the pineal hormone that's being released. It drops to 1/2. So here plain, brothers and sisters, African people have twice as much pineal hormone in their blood as Europeans. Straight up fact. Now, can I give you the test? 1, true or false? Do African people have large amounts of pineal hormone, melatonin in their blood? True or false? True. Let us move on. Fundamental. And why do you say that? Because we have a lower amount of pineal calcification. We only have 1/6 of our population calcified, whereas you have usually 80% or 60 to 80% of your population calcified. They will then counter and say, well, calcification does not mean that it doesn't stop producing any melatonin. I didn't say it stopped producing all melatonin. I said it was a reduction. It dropped from 70 nanograms in an uncalcified pineal to only 35 nanograms average serum level in a person who has a calcified pineal. If you're a Nigerian, your records are 5%. If you're a black person in Cincinnati, 10%. Black person in Watts, California, 15%. Indian, 25%. In East India, Japanese, 10%. If you are a white person in San Francisco, 65, 55, 60%. If you are a white person in Stockholm, Sweden, 80%. Cold, straight up numbers. You got a black thing going on. Your eyes open. So no wonder they call you soul people. No wonder you feel these vibes and can't find words to put it in all the time. There it is, calcified pineal. That's what it looks like. There was one study that was done in an attempt to cover this whole critical fact up, in which they did a study of pineal calcification in people in Uganda during a time when there was huge amounts of death taking place. And they would take an x-ray of the person, then you'd see the pineal that had been cut out of their brain after they were dead. I said, oh no, I can't trust these numbers here. No, this is game here. So I had to disregard that publication. Now, you don't have to, if you don't trust a black authority, but this is for the people who be watching these videotapes. Because I can tell by my audience here that you who have been coming to these black media lectures, you guys, you've been raised up well over a period of many years. So you don't even deal on this plane because you trust what a black man says. You've been woke up a long time ago. Now, for those of you in media land, if you don't trust this lovely black audience who sit before me tonight, if you don't trust me, a black man, I don't care. I care what folks here think. But perhaps you'll listen to your own, Sigmund Freud. Would you please buy a copy of Moses and Monotheism by Sigmund Freud? Moses and Monotheism was the last book published by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, the rediscovery of psychiatry for the European world. A Jewish physician, mind you. Oh, an Askazic Jew. A Khazar Jew. Yes, you should read also The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler. Yes, you should. And you also would want to read the book The Columbus Conspiracy by Michael Bradley. Yes, that's helpful. Oh, and don't forget Dr. Ben's book, Black Jews. Oh, don't leave that one out. And don't forget Rudolph Windsor, called the book on Babylon. You don't want to, Babylon Timbuktu, you don't want to leave those out. No way, please. And don't leave out this wonderful book on Hebrewisms in West Africa, written in 1930. You don't leave that one out either. But coming back to the main point, here on the desk of Sigmund Freud, year 1936 in Vienna, is his desktop. If you read this book, Moses and Monotheism, Sigmund Freud says that he studied more psychology than he did more history than he did psychology. He had been studying Egyptian Kemetic history before he ever became famous. He studied about hypnotism by the Egyptians. He studied from Charcot and others, and Mesmer. And that's why he got turned on to psychology. But also he knew that hypnotism had been practiced in ancient Kemet. He studied about the underworld, or the so-called unconscious, that was talked about in Osiris. Each morning, now get this, the first thing that Sigmund Freud did when he entered his office in the morning was to do what? Was to walk up and to touch the head of Jehudi, a statue of Jehudi as a baboon, touching wisdom, hoping that he would be blessed. He was a firm, and bottom line, he was a firm student of African psychology and medicine. Did you know that? True or false? Was Sigmund Freud a student of African medicine? True, he was. How do you know that? The last book he wrote before he died, Moses and Monotheism. He wrote it 20 years before he published it. Why? White supremacy. Clear cut. He knew what he was dealing with in Vienna, Europe, and America. There on his desk is his manuscript of Moses and Monotheism. Can you make out some of those statues? Oh my goodness, look on the left-hand side. There's Wosir in the background. Ah, Hathor. Amun-Ra. Oh, there's Bast. Right there on the man's desktop. Now, this was the couch in which Sigmund Freud would analyze his patients. You see that picture above his couch? If you went, can you imagine this? Oh, I can't talk to a black psychiatrist. You aren't as good as a white psychiatrist. I know you aren't as good as a Jewish psychiatrist. And then you go into the so-called top Jewish psychiatrist's office, and you look up on this wall over the counter that you're being analyzed on, and you see a print of this. Bam! That's right, brother. Abu Simbel, Ramses II, who was said to have been the person who chased them out during the Exodus. Ain't a bit of truth to that. So you'd want to read, in particular, Hebrewisms of West Africa, and you'd also want to read some comments by Charles Finch in his Message from the Dark Land. He has some nice comments about the time of the so-called Exodus of those people who were in concert with the Hyksos. Here these. Now, do we have to even raise a question as to whose people this man belongs to? Not even a question. Clearly an African man. Oh, and there on the other side is the Sphinx. He was a student of African medicine and African history. Yes, he was. So Sigmund Freud says that Moses was an Egyptian. Moses was a black man, clearly. Now, this, my brother, is a sweet piece, without question. Here we have a black cube, a black square, if you will, with a child emerging from that cube. And behind it is his teacher. Melanin, the core atom in melanin is carbon. C-A-R-B-O-N. Carbon is the black stuff on the end of that burnt wood named Kim. Carbon is the atom formed in the core of a star, in the main sequence of stars. Carbon is the atom of life. Carbon forms a cube. It forms a square. It can bind in 4 different directions and form a 6-sided cube. So my brothers and sisters, this is the bottom line. This is the bottom line on Kim, right here. It shows life emerging with his invisible teacher in the back of his head. What does that suggest? Oh, that's immense. It's showing that you are not alone, that you have a holy guardian angel with you each second of every minute of your life. And you can and that's your super genius connection. When you walk through that black doorway, you said you calling what? You calling God through your black door. And all of the angels and archangels in between. Can you see why somebody doesn't want you even to study yourself? I hope they don't call home. It wasn't E.T. calling home now. It was Mom and Daddy calling home. Is it wake-up time yet? Yes, it's wake-up time. So this is the core, fundamental image of melanin. It's carbon as a transphysical dimensional doorway between the material realm and the spirit realm, in which the spirit realm guides the emergence of spirit as it moves from the spirit realm into matter. And when you're in matter, you kind of lose consciousness of where you came from. But you got your father and your mother right there with you, guiding you each and every hour of the day. And if your heart is pure, you see the line a little bit closer as to where to go. If you're a little bit confused, you got to do repeat time and cross the same path more than once. Here is showing that direction, but actually this is the black coffin in the Great Pyramid of Giza in the King's Chamber. A black, all black room with a black rectangular coffin upon which the initiate would sit for 3 days as they would go through their education in another plane, in which they were being trained to do what? Being trained to use their greater mind. You and I would call it clairvoyance, clairaudience, seership, trance, contact, dimensional communication. We're not saying I'm going to wait for the heavens to tell me what to do, because once you get these ideas, then you've got to shape matter into the image of your perfection. You got to sweat it out. Again, the same concept with multi-tier level. Again, different levels, tribal memories, collective memories. But I do want to go back to this. If there's any slide that I could ask you to take a snapshot of in your mind, if there was one, this is the one. Take a snapshot of that in your mind. Hold on to it. This is the one. That's the core. As I, and a real neophyte, little minor student mentality, this is the one. That's the core image of Melon. Last but not least, in a place known as Bubastis, or Bast, in the so-called Delta region of Kemet, in the 1890s, the Egyptian Explorational Society did uncover this phase of a person. This is the phase of a Hyksos, Pharaoh. This is the phase of those people who were creating dissension in our homeland. Do you see some epicanthal fold type things going on here? Do you see that face? That's the one who disrespected our homeland. We know the European did. That's known. They called him Set, clear cut. He said in Introduction to African History by Diop, in his first book, he says that when the Egyptians would see red-skinned people, mean people who got sunburned, they were sacrificed on sight. They were called fowls, because they had been waging war on us for quite a while. We just dealt with that straight up. We had pushed them all the way back into the northern regions. So with that in mind, we're going to have a period of questions and answer after this, but I would just like to say that if there's one slide that I would ask you to hold on to, let it be this one. My brothers and sisters, you are so black, you are so divine. You've got a perfect mission to do. I wait to be taught by you. Thank you. We're going to have a brief break while they change the tape.
To help activate the pineal gland for us.
Yes. What foods are best for development of the pineal gland? A very critical question. It is said in the book, Mentions to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that if a person were to remain on a vegetarian diet for 7 consecutive years, the secretions of their pineal
gland would change from a white fluid into a golden fluid. The issue of becoming a vegetarian is important. And I don't understand all of that, so let me just offer a few comments. One, it may have to do with the very kinds of the nature of the food that's present, the nature of proteins and fats that are present in animal products. Animal products contain protein that contain complex carbon bonds, double and triple bonds, and especially the free fatty acids, double and triple bonds. When those bonds are broken through the process of metabolism, the bonds, when they break and go from a 3-bond down to a 2-bond or a 2-bond down to a 1-bond, that extra bond is cast off can often be generated as a free radical ion, which is a very powerful uncharged electrical item that can then cause disruption of cells, DNA chains, and other cellular processes, and can cause premature cell death. Free radical generation, usually you find the increased incidence of free radicals in tissues that later become cancerous. Very importantly, melanin is a free radical scavenger. It picks it up, helps to hold on to it. Melanin can also be saturated or overloaded with free radicals and other toxic products, especially metals. So that may be one kind of comment. And another issue to consider is the frequency of feeding. 3 times a day will kill you quickly. Periodic fasting is essential. When one fasts, one burns one's own store of fats in one's own body, and it then is generated as ketone bodies, which can then be burned as twice as efficient a fuel. When you sleep at night, you're in a fasting state. The mind actually will stop using carbohydrates or glycogen and use mainly burn fats. When they burn the fat, the toxins which are usually present in your fat stores are also purged. They begin to come out as well. That's also a risk factor. The very person who fasts, you notice that usually when you fast, usually in the first day or two, if you go on a 3-day fast, first day you're going to get a cold. You might get sick. Toxins come out of fat cells that are being burned as a fuel. So frequency should be ideally 1 meal a day, and ideally something I've got away from myself. And that is we're usually eating in this society as medication. We're medicating ourselves with food. We're eating to calm down our anxiety. Usually we're eating and ripping and tearing the food because we want to rip and tear somebody who's giving us hell. Literally, it does. We eat and we chew and we grind and we bite. And it sure doesn't feel good to work your jaws. But you know what? Your feeling of hunger persists. It doesn't go away. You can eat all night long and you don't really feel hungry, but you don't feel satisfied. So you really are transferring your thoughts from the real issues to just getting caught up in the motor act of eating. So that's a very common, also with the media broadcast, eat, 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 eat. There's that kind of cultural phenomenon taking place. The Egyptians knew that the key to health was through dietics. Now, I'm a physician and an African physician, and I've seen hustler physicians. They can be intent upon cleaning you out at death. Whatever money you have, if your lawyer didn't get it, the doctor will. The majority of bankruptcies in this country, personal bankruptcies, are done to pay medical bills. Go into a hospital, stay in the hospital 1 week, $25,000. $5 for an aspirin. $20 for a Band-Aid. Hustle, big time hustle. And then when they serve you food in the hospital, it's the biggest hustle in the world. You say, how am I going to get healthy on this? So there's great need for improvement in all that region. But again, the frequency of feeding, the kind of foods that you eat, vegetarian products, certainly eating foods of color, the green leafy vegetables, critical. Now to get more specific to it, and it is possible. You want to get some books on by Lowell, Africa. He was a very well-known herbologist out of South Carolina. There's also some brothers coming out of New York, brothers and sisters coming out of the West Coast as well. You'd also may want to consider the issue of cell salts as some kind of the issue of not taking large amounts, but very small amounts to affect balances. And knowing that there's certain foods for each person of each zodiacal type, if you will. So certain personalities use more of a certain kind of mineral effect, if you will. That's more speculative. I have to search that out for. But I think there is great truth to that. And I have to come out myself, become competent even to address it fully. And I'm still growing to know. More to the melanin question. If you eat more melanated foods, you will prolong your life. So you would eat foods that are black beans, for example. Powerful. Now you don't have to always get the gaseous byproduct. Just soak your beans all day long and cook them all day long. And that'll take care of your gas. Otherwise, it may be rough. Nonetheless, the black beans, the foods that are high in tryptophan, particularly for the pineal, tryptophan, bananas. That is the precursor of serotonin and melatonin. With serotonin later gets 2 more enzymatic steps, becomes melatonin. So you want to eat a fair number of bananas, plankton especially. Another dietary issue, and probably the most important one to consider, is the quality of light itself. We don't often consider that light, sunlight. How many of us watch what kind of moonlight we're exposed to? Most of us don't even get exposed to moonlight. But for African people, moonlight is essential. Yes, full moonlight, new moon, and full moon. Essential. Essential. Especially the full moon of July and the full moon of January. Those. Especially. Full moon after the birth of the sun, or the winter solstice, and the summer solstice, the lowest part in the sky and the highest point in the sky. Those are times of very high pineal melatonin release. So sunlight and moonlight are absolutely critical to try to key into in terms of what kind of exposure that you're going to receive. Along with that question of light, the whole issue of energy form in general, especially some of you well know, music. What kind of music do you feed yourself? Do you give yourself a half hour of a delicious trance state, trance-inducing melanated sound? So while you're even in the body, you can just sit back and just listen to it. Just feel yourself just go on. Recharge. Induce a trance state with music. Smells. How many fragrances have you smelled? The oldest nerve in the body are the olfactory nerves. Smell. Pay attention. And throughout the coffin text and pyramid text, elaborate discussion to incense and fragrances. Elaborate discussions to what kind of incense to put around you as a means of inducing a state of trance. Touch. How does it feel? But of course, the most important food of all being love itself. The love between your parents, your children, and especially your mate. Your mate is the mirror of your soul. If she wants to shoot you down, take you down. If she wants to raise you up, if he wants to shoot you down, he can shoot you down. If he tells you you are the queen of the universe, then you bring online queen tape. Oh, you play the queen tape. He says you are the king of the universe. Then you bring online, open the door to the king tape. But if they say you're something less, then you're feeding yourself bad food. So I guess the whole point in that discussion is that the line of direction of what doors you choose to access is critical. What room you go into is critical. Now, once you're in the room, you'll be blessed. You got me at the rock and roll. But please try to shape the doors that you move yourself into. With certain foods, you can notice that certain foods you're feeling heavier, just down. Other times you say, oh, I don't know why I'm just clicking and skipping today. It's just on it. Maybe a host of factors, but clearly you say, if I can ever get that combination of food to work for me again. Now you can pay attention to what state you're in by just observing what you release into the commode. You can tell if you've been on time. You can tell by looking at what goes in. If it floats, if it doesn't float, you got a problem. If it's malodorous, then you know, oh, tremendous need for improvement here. Yes.
Yes, Dr. King, a couple of years ago, I was reading African Origins of Biological Psychiatry at the same time that I was reading Volume 1 of Medu Mater by Rodman Nefer. Now, he talks about the world being ruled by left hemispheric thinking people. Now, the question, I think I read something in your book about the calcification being related to the operation between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere.
Yes.
Okay, so I was rambling on about this last week with, just a roadie. So he asked me, well, if that's true, if the calcification affected and made Europeans less hemispheric, why did it have to end up on the left hemisphere as opposed to the right?
Okay, that's a very good point. Flesh it out a little bit. The left hemisphere is the part that's involved in logical thinking. Straight line, 1 + 1 makes 2, 2 + 2 makes 4. And only deal with the surface of things. Doesn't deal with feelings, doesn't deal with intuitions, only deal with concrete materiality. Right brain, just the opposite. Analogic, 1 + 1 is a divine 3. Love, romance, intuition. The left brain is also said to be the male side. People who have been found that men and also mathematical abilities are more left brain orientated. When you compare people who have XY chromosome, there's a male chromosome, they tend to have more of this left brain by psychological testing. People who have XX or females have more right brain. People who have XYY or an extra Y have even more left brain. So there's some support for that. The statement of this being a left-brain culture is a statement that it is a white male-dominated culture. And here we go back to Leonard Jeffries' two cradle theory, and I'm talking about Leonard Jeffries. It's a patriarchal, white, homosexual culture. Let's be thorough with it. Thorough with it. Greece was a white homosexual culture. Rome was a white homosexual culture, in which white males value the sexual love of other males over that of even a female. They did not allow her to vote or to hold property. In Greece, by the way, less than 10% of the people were citizens. You had no property. 90% plus were slaves. whoever wants to deify Greece as an example of a human model is crazy. White folks were slaves in Greece. 9 out of 10 of them were slaves in Greece. Even though the majority of the people who were in Greece before the whites were black. And Circe was a black goddess. So we know the stories on that one. But, so the long story made short is that the Inquisition, these are also important things to keep in mind, that right before 1492, white boys in Europe were involved in the burning of white women to the stake as witches. Then they went to black men and black women. So that was their fear of the white female. Their fear of their own undeveloped right brain. So that's a critical point of history. Now on the other side, I'm not going to let her off the hook because she raised him. And she didn't stop it. So you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So don't try to play me out on that. No, they ain't buying that one. No, I'm not coming here, Miss Ann. You have anything for me? It is my African queen that we're here to protect and to liberate. So back to the point of the right brain, in the African culture, the Africans were about matriarchy, not female domination, but to respect reality. She is half of me. And that's my mama and my family, I know for certain. It was Big Mama Nancy. I never met her. They still talking about Big Mama Nancy. What she said ruled in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Ain't no doubt about that. They still talking about Big Mama Nancy. They talking about Ivory Williams and Camille Williams to this minute. So that they were glorified because she played a lovingly mother role. She gave good raise. She was a my wife, Paulette. She was a supreme lady who raised our children and raised us and took us to heaven when they want to, please. But long story to be made known, the woman had property rights, she could vote, and inheritance took place with the female line. But when you got to that Ice Age culture where you no longer were the one bringing in vegetable products as food, that it was mainly all the food was animal products, you were chasing the herd, then it shift became a patriarchal, what is called a patriarchal culture based upon the using of animal food as 90% of the food stuff. Now, in that culture, white males clearly dominated and clearly oppress white females and try to pattern things to this day. It doesn't matter if they're using white females with the illusion of equality. Black women fighting for equality, so the white woman says, well, we have to give them equality before we give you equality. So bottom line, I have no equality. Bottom line is that I am still the majority in the prisons in America, which are being built at a phenomenal rate right now. I'm still the one who's being self-medicated on crack cocaine. Because I can't even afford a psychiatrist, let alone pay to get help. And can't hope to find one that can even talk to me. And I can find many very powerful therapists in the community, but many times they're being asked to see 20 plus clients a day. 30 minutes apiece, please. Be serious. And they're doing a good job with that, but they got overwhelming caseloads. In other words, the system is not even meant to treat. It's meant to fail. That's just a little game. Talking about we trying to get somebody service. But I know we got some other questions, I'm going to move on, but let me just bring to a closure on this one, is that you hit a major point. The pineals in the midline between the left and the right brain, and in fact, a woman's job is to learn, one of her major tasks in life, some say, is to learn. She's born into her right brain. She learns her left brain side through her man. A man learns his right brain side through his woman. And then you bring along the unit of both and every other unification.
Yes. We don't want to have you close unless you're ready to close.
Oh, no, I'm not by no means.
Okay, well, we're not ready. But what we would like to do, the Florence Jackson Academy, excuse my bad.
That we should, you know what the saying is? You reach until it hurts And then you give some more on top of that, because that is an attack against your community, against our community, not just, I'm part of this too. If there were no place for us to be, we wouldn't be here now. And I don't know but a place to have been here 17 years, that has raised at least 2 generations. So that one should really give, and to pass the point, you got to make a sacrifice. Have to make a sacrifice. And we look at what is taking place now, is that we have moments in which we establish institutions, and they kind of recede, and the other side is constantly attacking without fail. And when you lose a few good institutions, then things, I look at the way things are now, things are worse now than what they were 20 years ago, for certain. Much worse. Much worse. So this is a must. A must. And perhaps we want to bring it back again right before the end of tonight as well, at the final close of tonight. We might want to bring back the collection pot, because that's critical. Yes.
Yeah, really enjoyed your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing with us. You made a statement about radio waves and melanin.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that more in terms of the radio waves and the implications in the spiritual sense?
Oh yeah. Melanin is a doorway through which energy forms of many different forms are converted into other forms. And certainly light in the electromagnetic spectrum, which covers a huge range from cosmic waves right on down to heat, red on the other end, with the radio waves being a certain part, and certainly the visible spectrum another part, and TV waves and X-rays and so on up a scale. For example, that melanin, as is informational, it's such a fantastic energy conversion unit. For example, in your eyes, when light passes through the pupil of the eye as particles or photons, it hits the receptors, which are made up of rods and cones. Rods for black and white vision, cones for color vision, rods rhodopsin, cones opsin. The photoreceptor pigment captures the light. It then passes off the top of that rod or cone down to the surface or the epithelium, and right there is melanin. Melanin pulls the photon out of the receptor, converts it into an electrical charge, which passes through the rest of the retina into the optic nerve. So it converts it from a particle of light to a chemical charge. And it does that because one end of the melanin molecule has a positive pole, the other end has a negative pole. There are 2 major planes in the molecule, there are 2 major events that take place. It also attracts a large number of metals, iron being a primary example, manganese, another example, calcium, extremely heavy binding of calcium. In a similar fashion, melanin does the same thing in the inner ear, where sound waves are converted, acoustical pressure waves are converted into electrical impulse. Melanin is present in 12 pigmented centers along this black nerve tract in the brain stem. It's also present in the dura mater, or the covering of the brain. Now here one would raise the question, also in the P arachnoid, one would raise the question, in those sites, is melanin transducing or converting radio waves that pass through the skull and then convert it into an electronic signal that is then being picked up by other deciphering units in the brain or other melanin centers. Melanin is present in the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is sensitive to magnetic fields. Birds fly where they may because of their pineal gland's ability to sense the magnetic field of the earth and track along the magnetic field of the earth and plot its move. And we feel vibrations. I walk and talk to my wife. Before she says a word, I can feel her vibe. We talk about love, empathy, and being able to quote Blind people, before the person even starts lying, before you open their mouth, you know where they're coming from. It's just a game. Even before you start that, you've already turned on your X-ray vision. So in terms of the magnetic field effects, conversion of photons,